level of compliance.
Welcome to Montana.
Hey, thank you. That's right. On the East Coast, people are so rude. Y'all just keep talking for hours. Okay, I'm done with that. When last we spoke, we were talking about how men can get involved, what men can do. This idea that if it's true that men can stop rape, then what does that mean? What can men do? How can men start to become allies with women? The goal of our organization is to help men to be allies with women. And that's what we're going to spend the rest of today talking about, demonstrating. And I want to start with an exercise that we do. But in order to do the exercise, I need to do another exercise. So I'm going to do with you, just have a brief visioning exercise. I just want you to imagine yourselves in the story that I'm going to tell. I'll ask a few questions. They are real questions. I want you to answer. They're not rhetorical. And this is the situation. If you can imagine for a moment that it's a warm spring day, maybe the first really warm day of the year, get through the summer, the winter, that would be the cold part. Get through the winter, you have a warm spring day, and for some reason you don't have any work to do that day. Classes were canceled unexpectedly, or something happened at work and you can't go to work. You don't have anything you need to do, nothing to worry about. Somebody else is taking care of the kids if you've got kids. Nothing. And it's, again, totally unexpected. You just suddenly find yourself with a free afternoon. And there's this, you decide what you're going to do is just go relax. And there's this spot you know about. It's kind of quiet. It's right near the banks of a river. And you're just going to go and hang out there by yourself. Can you imagine that? Yeah, maybe. If we're outdoorsy here, we say that on the East Coast, and they're like, you want us to go hang out by the Anacostia River? Have you smelled that thing? Right? So it's very, maybe here it's a little easier to imagine that. And you're going to take a picnic, right? What are you going to take with you on the picnic?
Bananas.
Bananas? Okay, thank you. What else? Cheese? Salad? Wine? What else? Chocolate, because you've always got to have chocolate. Absolutely. What else are you going to have with you?
Fried chicken.
Fried chicken! Thank you. Did you get set up to say that? Okay. We have a tradition in our organization that when someone says fried chicken, that it's going to be a good presentation. If someone doesn't say fried chicken, it's going to be bad. So I'm going to keep asking until someone says it. All right. Anything else you're going to bring on the picnic? Okay, so you're pretty loaded down. You've got some good food. Maybe you bring a book, or maybe not. Maybe you bring, some music to listen to. Whatever. You're just going to relax. So you're hanging out. You've eaten. Everything's peaceful. Beautiful day. And you're just starting to maybe doze off. And something distracts you. And you look up and you see in the river coming towards you, there's a person in the water. And they're not swimming. They're like screaming for help. It's pretty clear that they're about to drown. Waving their arms in the air. They're calling for help. Their head goes underwater. And they're going to pass maybe 10 feet away from you. What do you do? You're going to jump in, right? Or what do you say? You're going to find some way to help them. If you've ever had life-saving classes, right, you know, well, first you have to check the conditions of the water, make sure that if you jump in, you're not going to break your neck or your ankle or whatever. You have to check how fast the water speed is going and do all these things. And at a certain point, I get worried that the person's going to go by the time you finish the checklist. But you do also have to be very careful, right? You have to be sure that you're not going to make yourself also someone who's drowning in the river. If you can't swim, don't jump in. But you want to help them. A lot of people said jump in. Other people might want to throw a rope, or maybe there's a long stick that you have nearby that you can reach out to. But you want to do something, right? Okay. Well, let's swimmer. You jump in the water, you reach the person, you grab them, pull them to shore. You're okay, they're okay. Well, how are you feeling? How are you feeling now?
Wet.
Wet, absolutely. The water's probably pretty cold, so, wet and cold. Tired, somebody says. You've also got an adrenaline rush, right? All of a sudden, you might be somewhat tired, but you also have a whole lot of energy because your body, responds to crisis. You're ready to go, right? And you feel like you can take on the world. You're also a hero. You saved somebody's life. It's a pretty good thing. You should feel good. Well, it's a good thing you've got all that adrenaline pumping, because you get to the shore, you've saved this person, you get a chance to start to catch your breath again. But no sooner have you done that you look back at the river, and now there are two people coming downstream, also drowning. Same level of distress as before. Well, now what do? Go back in. A little more hesitation that time, though, right? You have to think about it a little bit more. But let's imagine for a minute that you're an Olympic caliber swimmer. You need to jump back. You're Janet Evans. You jump back in the water, grab one person under one arm, another person under the other arm, kick back to shore with just your feet. What else would you kick with, I suppose? You get back to shore. All three people that you've saved are okay. You're doing okay. But now you're exhausted, right? I mean, if you had adrenaline before, it's gone. It only lasts for so long. And you're just about to collapse right next to the three people that you've just saved. But you look back up, and now you see not two people in the river, but 50. 50 people coming down the river, all drowning. And now, not quite so easy. What do you do? Say that again?
Figure out why they're all in the river.
Figure out why they're all in the river. I'll come back to that in just a second. I heard somebody else say you call for help. Well, I didn't hear anybody bring their cell phone. Wasn't in the list of things we took with us. But that's okay. Let's imagine you call for help, and they're still going by, right? But this is a really interesting question. At a certain point, you've got to wonder, what the hell's going on with that river? Right? Why are all these people winding up in the water? Was this a swimming class gone horribly awry? Is there a bridge out? Was there a boating accident? Something's going on. And we need to find out what's happening upstream to cause all those people to wind up in the river. And it works kind of the same way with sexual assault. I'm sure this is really subtle, right? None of you saw that coming. If you can imagine that the people in the river are people who've been assaulted, it's essential to help find a way to get them onto the shore, to help them to heal, to help them to find their own process of healing. Absolutely essential. It's the work that women in Rape Crisis Center and some men have been doing for decades, and it's absolutely essential. And it's overwhelming. It's exhausting. It can wear you out. It can make you feel hopeless. If that's all we're able to do. But luckily, we can do more. We can go upstream. We can find out what's happening in our society that makes it possible for more than 1 million women and girls and hundreds of thousands of men and boys to be raped every year. And that's what this exercise that I'm going to do now, or that we're going to do now, is about. This is a way of sort of metaphorically going upstream in our society and see what's happening that might contribute to a rape culture. David's putting up some cards right now that have words most harmful to women, least harmful to women, and the third one that's not at all harmful. And we have these other cards here that have writing on the other side. They have different attitudes or assumptions or behaviors on them. And what I'm going to ask you all to do is to look at the cards and to discuss, as a group, how harmful these behaviors are to women and why. Okay? And we're going to try to come to a consensus here and place them on the continuum. There are no right or wrong answers, of course. What we're looking for is a discussion. And so, right, that's what matters most, is finding a way to get at what's going on here. Why is this harmful, if it's harmful, or maybe not, maybe it isn't. Maybe it has absolutely nothing to do with harm to women, and that's fine too. And we talk about harm to women here because women are the majority of sexual assault survivors in this country, so that's what we want to focus on. But we do a similar exercise at different times as a continuum of harm to men, or to people of color, or to gay, lesbian, bisexual people. And you can imagine there are lots of different ways that you could slice this. But today, let's try this as a continuum of harm to women. Does that make sense to everybody? Great. Well, let's start with this one. How about blaming a woman or girl for being raped because she wore revealing clothes? Most harmful. And why is that? Some of my questions have some obvious answers, some of them don't.
It makes her a victim. It makes her feel even more like a victim. It's her fault.
It makes her feel even more like a victim. So she's already been assaulted. And this is kind of like, to use a sports metaphor, piling on, right? Okay. What else?
Doesn't help the healing process.
Doesn't help the healing process. I had one person say, well, you know, I'm not sure how harmful it necessarily is, but it certainly doesn't help, right? Doesn't help in the healing process. If someone needs to heal from being assaulted, starting off by blaming them for something doesn't seem terribly useful. Okay. What else?
Doesn't it the blame from the perpetrator?
It shifts the blame away from the perpetrator. It makes the perpetrator invisible in some ways, right?
It takes the perpetrator out of the picture. It also gives him permission.
Gives him permission. It says, sure, it's understandable that he would have done this. You know, look at how she was dressed. She was inviting.
I was going to say this, but just
Similar thing. Well, what does this say about men? I know the question is about harm to women, but what does this say about men?
But they can control it.
That we can't control ourselves somehow.
It's like have a right.
We've got this right, did you say? We have this entitlement and at the same time this complete lack of self-control. I mean, this is actually, I would say, pretty harmful to men as well. This idea that, you know, if I see a woman's ankle or choose your other favorite body part, that all of a sudden I've just got to have it right then. Wow. What a difficult way to live one's life. There's an Old Spice soap commercial that says, men think about women every 5.3 seconds. Well, first of all, how the hell do you measure that? I mean, that has got to be the worst statistic ever. How can you measure that? And secondly, can you imagine the drooling morons we would have to be? If that's all we thought about, how could we possibly ever do anything? So, anyway, a little off topic there. So this is pretty harmful. But let me play devil's advocate for a minute. No one else is going to bring this up. So I mean, but is it true that a woman might increase her risk of sexual assault if she dresses in a certain way?
Yes.
I see some people saying yes, a couple of people saying no. Who says no? Can you say why?
Because what she wears has nothing to do with being raped. It doesn't mean anything about sexual promiscuity or wanting to rape. It's just the clothes she likes to wear for the guys.
Okay. So what she wears is more a reflection of how she feels or how she wants to feel about herself. But I hear other people saying yes. Why might how she dresses impact the likelihood that she'd be assaulted?
Well, it could invite the possibility that she's a slut. She wants it. She doesn't care.
So it might invite some assumptions.
Yep, and again, we're back in the female box. That this is, if you dress that way, then you're a slut.
Right. Which I think is probably exactly what you're saying as well.
Yes.
That there are assumptions that might be made. And so if assumptions are made, it might in fact identify her to some people as being an appropriate target. I'm pretty clear that no one's suggesting that's acceptable. But what we're saying is that it might be true. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean,
Other people who are
people should
saying-
be allowed to dress the way they want, but dressing in a revealing way just invites trouble.
Because there are stereotypes.
It might feed into stereotypes, and the stereotypes can lead to violence. If people act on stereotypes, the stereotypes can be violent, or can lead to violence, and therefore I suppose they are going to. So what do we do with that? People should be able to dress however they want. I think we probably all agree with that. And when someone does dress in a certain way and they're assaulted, they tend to get blamed for it, or they often get blamed for it. What I heard in the first half of this discussion is, in this room, that's unacceptable. And yet it happens. What do we say to people who think that or feel that way?
If someone got mugged, don't blame them. You don't look at the type of clothing they have.
We don't talk about, well, you've been known to give money to people before.
But it's interesting because last year I was in North Carolina, and I was visiting a friend of mine in Durham, North Carolina, where I was living at the time. And I was driving to see her about like 2 in the morning in sort of the bad part of Durham. If there is a bad part of Durham, this would be the bad part. And I drove and I drove up to her house and got out of the car and went up to her house and rang the doorbell, and she wasn't there, or she was asleep, which most people do at 2 in the morning. And so I got back into my car. I'm about to turn the ignition, and there's someone with a gun in my window, right? He gets my wallet, I drive off, and I start telling people about it. What's the first thing they ask me?
Was he black?
Yep.
First question is, was he black? What was the second question? What were you doing in that neighborhood at 2 o'clock in the morning? How many times after I heard that 2 or 3 times, how often did I tell that story afterwards? 0. You know, I felt traumatized, I felt scared, and I also felt like it was my fault because I wanted to visit my friend at 2 in the morning.
And I think that's actually one of the things we can say, right? Is let's talk about it as a robbery. Sometimes, in fact, we do blame the victim. What were you doing in that neighborhood? We should have known that was going to happen. But we also, if we think about it for a minute, say, well, that's pretty stupid. And it's terrible that David or anybody else feels like they can't tell that story. Why does that not also apply here? Well, so let's go back to the question, where do we want to place this? I was hearing most people saying most harmful. Is that accurate? Okay, are we talking all the way here? Do we want to give a little bit of space? The first one's always a little
You want to see the other cards, right? You want to see what?
And I'm also just taping it up. I'm not nailing it in. The university would be very upset if I were nailing it in. So what do we think? Is this too high, too low? Who wants it higher than this?
Can we move it later?
You can move it later.
I'll put it lower.
Right here. Who says right here or higher?
Lower.
And who says lower? It's pretty even split. I'm going to move it a little bit lower just so that we'll have some more room. And we'll, as I said, we could sort of negotiate. That's kind of split the difference on these for the interest of time.
Referring to one's girlfriend as my bitch. Harmful? Yeah? Why is it harmful? It's degrading, it's derogatory. It's disrespectful.
It's claiming ownership.
It's claiming ownership.
She is in that role as just, you are my play toy.
That you're now my play toy. You can't get out of this box that I put you in.
Do people say that here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Here and everywhere you go.
Everywhere I go, I ask that question, and everywhere I go, I'm like, Yeah.
Do you think we hear it in DC? Where do we hear it in DC? Everywhere.
Everywhere.
You should have heard us talking the other day at the office. Just joking. I was thinking about everyone in DC talking this way, and just like we're all walking through the street saying this.
Thinking about women every 5.3.
Right, of course. Well, what is it about this ownership sense? Is it the my? What does this word mean? Female dog?
Your
Hmm?
servant.
Servant? What were you gonna say?
Well, it's a female dog, the cat. Beats the cat.
Is there a female mother dog of some sort? I've heard both, I'm not sure. I've also heard, what did you say?
I said servant. Like
Servant?
Somebody who's just supposed to do whatever you want.
Slave? Some sort?
That's the human.
Less than human? What would you say? Inferior? But we've heard it. Where have we heard it? How has it been used?
Song.
In songs and movies? Everyone seen the show Spin City? Heather Locklear used it last season, talking about this woman. She's such a bitch. It's at 9 p.m. on a major channel. Anyone can see it.
Does he say it?
Yeah.
Where do we hear it around the people around us? I mean, do you all know people who might use this word?
You use it almost as like a nickname. Like, I don't know, like, people say, bitch, please. And like, that's
Bitch, please. What does that mean? What are we saying when we use that nickname?
I don't know. It's always in like a strange context when she uses it, but it's like you're sort of making fun of her, or like she's sort of they're making fun of you, or you're making fun of them, and it's just like stop being such an idiot.
Stop being such an idiot.
That's how it's used.
What you're saying doesn't make sense right now, so I'm going to stop you by saying bitch, please. Oh, hold on. Is it okay for that to happen? I mean, what happens when people say that? What's the response?
They laugh and say, oh, you idiot, but
They laugh and say, oh, you idiot.
that's what, I don't know.
Right.
It's not okay. Here's a deal. It's just become common language.
It's become common language.
When you hear it, bitch doesn't really have a shock factor anymore. It's just out there.
There's a pop culture magazine. It's actually Feminists Respond to Pop Culture. And it's called Bitch Magazine. You know, it's part of our language now. What were you going to say?
That's what I was gonna say. And I live in a sorority with 30 girls, and I say we're bitch like all the time. Like we call each other bitches, and it doesn't even. It's a joke. It's a joke.
It's a
like,
joke.
Oh my God, it's just bitch. But at the same time, like you stop thinking about it. I don't know.
It's become so commonplace that we can't see it for what its real meaning is in some way. What about the context that's used in when women say it to women? Is it different than when men say it? So then is it harmful?
I think
Depends on the
it's
context.
the situation, the context.
So give me a non-harmful context that it could be used in.
Bitch.
Huh?
Two people know each other, and it's being used in a joking manner.
And you know that it's a joke.
When you know that it's a joke.
Yeah.
Right.
I've also seen T-shirts that bitch was big and total control of herself.
Yeah.
So it's taking back the word.
Right. It's taking back the word. It's reclaiming the word. Right.
Some of my friends define the word as a strong woman, a strong, assertive.
A strong, assertive woman. So then, if that's the way that you're defining it,
The mutual definition.
what do we do about the definition of servant or slave or female dog? Is that definition, I mean, because that's the first definition I heard, right? How do we know the context that we're using the word? The way they say it?
The voice he's saying it, where you're at.
The way she's saying it, where you're at? I mean, it sounds like men can't say this word. All right.
They say it all the time.
Huh? You can only use it in jail. Because what does it mean when we say it to other men? What does it mean when a man calls another man his bitch? They're gay? Or what about in prison? They're inferior?
What has he done if he's made somebody his bitch? He's taken control, he's raped them.
When we talk about why it's a men's issue, we talk about how men are survivors of sexual assault. People say, yeah, but that's just in prison. Well, it is. It does happen a lot in prison. Why does it happen a lot in prison? It's about power? Because
A lot of rapists.
there are a lot of rapists?
Because there aren't any women or the men are segregated.
Because the men are segregated from the women.
It says revealing prison uniform.
It says revealing prison uniforms. Right? Right? That county orange doesn't work in here. I used to work in a prison. And the idea of no women being in this community, of having a community of all men, and especially a community that gets oppressed, because that's what we do in prison. We're putting people into cells. We're oppressing their freedom, right? And everyone's a man. So why do we turn it into the system of having bitches in prison, or of raping other men? I mean, these are men who, if you ask them what their feelings are about rape, they say it's a horrible thing. And yet they'll go and sexually assault other men in prison. And they won't do it when they get out. Something's going on inside prison. And I think it's around the fact that there aren't women there. That there's an economy, that there's a power structure that we have outside of prison that needs to be recreated inside prison in some way.
A display of power.
A display of power of some sort. Does this play out in race? Can someone think of a way that this could play out in race?
Someone say it? I'm seeing lots of people nodding.
Rape is an act of violence. Calling somebody a derogatory name is also an act of violence.
It's a violent thing to do, to call someone a derogatory name. But yet, in some situations, in some contexts, it's not a derogatory word.
That's because we've been desensitized by our use of these words in a joking way.
What does it mean that, I know a couple people, maybe people aren't comfortable with using the word bitch in here, but I've heard some people say they are. And what does it mean that we're comfortable using that word in here? But when I say let's bring it back to race, everyone sort of nods their head, but no one can say anything. And what does that mean for our desensitizing the violence that's done to women? Where would you place this? I'm going to come back to you two, because you're talking about the context that's in. Where would you place it?
I think that's somewhere in between most harmful and less harmful.
So sort of halfway in between? You'd make it less harmful than blaming? Yeah? Where else would other people place this?
If that encourages power, then perhaps it's most damaging.
That's more harmful.
Yeah. Because you're not talking about civilians, but you're talking about everyone.
That you're not just talking about survivors in this sense, but you're talking about all women.
Well, you're talking about men. I mean, if it's encouraging men to exert power or display it, then I think it refers to all men.
If it's
That's the potential of harming women.
and it also keeps men in this box
Yes.
of exerting power. What were you going to say?
I was going to say that if a woman's person to have is staying with that person, then there may have been other factors that
That if this is a relationship, that it may be more things may be going on than just this word being used. That there may be other power situations going on. you have something? Just,
Um,
where would you place it?
I would put it as more harmful.
But what about if we both know that it's joking? Or what if it's two women talking to each other? Where do we place it then? Hmm? You still place it,
Yes, because it takes away self-esteem.
you place it in the middle, is that what you said?
Yes, because it takes away your self-esteem.
Takes away your self-esteem.
That's, your self-esteem is powerful. And not when you don't have that, that makes you vulnerable to more vulnerable.
That if we're cutting away at someone's self-esteem, or if we're calling someone this word, that they might internalize that word, and then actions can be done based on that word. What were you going to say up there?
I'm just going to say that it's really hard placing it before or really even after because in many ways both are basically what people use to like justify what men used to justify going after women, and it's just hard for me to like think that either one is like more harmful than the other because what they are is they're both giving men a reason to do this and keep on doing this.
But you're saying that it's difficult to place it in relation to this one because they're both giving men reasons to commit sexual assault.
Yeah, it's like there's really barely any difference in like magnitude of harm.
But what about two women? What if one woman calls another woman her bitch? Or just calls a woman a bitch?
It's basically the same thing. It's devaluing just women in general.
There is, though, the notion of reclamation of a word. You can take the harmful power away from that word if you use it in an appropriate context. And you can actually work towards making that word less harmful. It's the same idea as making, like, in some gay communities, the word queer is something that people say commonly, and it's not something that is used to insult. It's taking that word back, taking away the harmful power, and making it something that can't be used to hurt people anymore, can't be used to promote a harmful power structure.
That there's a history of oppressed communities reclaiming words that have been used to oppress them. What would you say to that? Well, let me ask you real quick, where would you place this card?
I think that it's really hard to place that card because there's no context.
There's no context. So depending on where the card is, it can either be up here at most harmful, you put it not at all harmful.
Well, on this card, it's a man saying it to his girlfriend.
Well, it's a person saying it to one's
It's a
girlfriend.
person saying it to one's girlfriend, I'm sorry. So I think it does have context on this. So, like, in my opinion, I wouldn't put it as least harmful, but I still wouldn't put it above
Above blaming.
the other necessarily, although I do understand how people are saying, well, it is the beginning of it all. This does give them a reason, but.
But I've heard guys refer to their girlfriends as bitches and say that as, you know, call her a bitch because she's opinionated and she's strong-willed. And I think that's really amusing that someone would think that was a bad thing because that's why I like that person. You know, okay, call her a bitch, but she's the person that I'm with and I like her because of that.
But see, this context, it's one's girlfriend, it's not she is a bitch, it's my bitch, it's claiming her. It is she is not a person any longer, she is something that's ownership.
She's
This
property.
person has been claimed. That's the difference to me.
Two more comments here and then here.
I have to agree with her that in this context, especially my bitch, you know, it's devaluing. And there's
What about reclamation of a word?
reclamation sometime in the future, and not in that context, obviously, and not with the context, and not with the meaning that it has on that card.
Even if a man says that, I think can still be harmless. Like, I know if I were to say that in front of all my
Everyone's head just turned. It's like, what?
If I were to say that in front of my friends, there'd be applause, and everyone would laugh at me because they know that it's meaningless. And so I think it's absolutely the intent behind the word and what is meant by the person saying it.
It's the intent behind the word. Where would you place this?
I'd put it right in between. There's one intent
Right. I hear most people would say right around here. It sounds like if it wasn't this language of referring to one's girlfriend as my bitch, that we may have more of a discussion about putting it down here. But it sounds like the context has it up here, whatever context this might be. I don't necessarily see as much context as maybe you all are reading into it. Is this okay with everyone? Would anyone like to put it higher this way? You want to put it that way?
Yeah.
Why do you want to put it more?
Well, I've heard a lot of people talk about reclaiming words and stuff. That might be fine for you personally too. I reclaimed this word for myself, so now it's not harmful. So I'm going to use it, and I'm spreading it around the community. And that doesn't mean that everybody that hears it has reclaimed this word. It still affects a lot of people, and depending on their age, depending on their experience, depending on what they've done. And so I see that kind of language, whether you feel you personally have reclaimed it, I see it as harmful for society. I think it's harmful when people hear it and react to it and don't say anything about it because they're offended or hurt. And you don't know the hurt you're doing with words without checking in with everybody that can hear you. Everybody in this room, I'd have to go around and say, how did that affect you and you and you? I don't know when I say that word. So if I don't say the word, I'm not offending anybody. So I see language as very harmful, and it degrades, it brings people, yeah, I put it right with that.
You put it right here? Go for it.
Maybe off. The thing that I noticed is that one seems very covert. When you're talking about blaming a woman being raped because she wore revealing clothes, it takes the focus off of and onto it's about sex and not about power. That one seems blatant, and some of us have agreed that it seems like a power thing. I own her. And as long as it's in the open, then you can deal with it better than you can if the focus isn't even where it should be.
So where would you place this?
I would put it on the right side.
On this side?
Yeah.
So how many people put it on this side? Raise your hand. How many people put it on this side? How many people put it least harmful? One hand. Well, sounds like where we had it before, the middle, is a good dividing place.
And, as you can see, this is one of the really powerful things about this exercise. Where could you take this conversation, right? You can go 1,000 different places with it. A lot of different issues have already come up. And we've got a stack of cards that we selected. We've got about a dozen cards here. We've made about 50 or 60 of them that we could use in different contexts. What I want to do is I want to go through a couple more cards at least. Maybe not quite as much depth. Not because I'm not interested in what we have to say, but because I am interested in making sure that you can get out of here by 9 o'clock. And we want to do a few other things. And we will definitely show you all the cards that we have here so that you can get a sense of some of the different things that we use. And these are some of the same cards that we use in every workshop that we do. And these are the exact same comments that are made no matter what the audience looks like, which is really an amazing thing to me to recognize. Well, let's try this one. What about honking or whistling at a woman or girl as she's walking down the street? Is that harmful?
That's dangerous?
Okay, great. One at a time. One at a time. Let's go ahead. Right here.
Wait, you go? You can go down now.
Right here and then here. Please.
Okay, I was gonna say, like, it can be harmful, and like I don't like to think of it this way, but at the same time, like, it can be a self-esteem booster to be like, I look good. I feel good. People like the way I look. I'm pretty.
Sometimes the way you dress is intended to make you feel better, and if people notice the way that you're dressed, you might feel better. Okay? So it can be. Yes?
It might be attention, but it's negative attention.
How's that?
Because it's not, they're not looking at the person, like she's no longer a person, she's now a sex object.
No one ever says, wow, great SAT scores!
Yeah.
Woohoo! Or it's at the very least very narrow attention,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Yeah.
Maybe lesser between that one and the blaming the woman girl for wearing whatever clothes that causes the pumpkin to listen.
This is saying, hey, great job wearing those clothes. This is saying, hey, great job wearing those clothes. Right? And is that what you're getting at? It is kind of scary. Yeah, that's a, gee, imagine that. We get mixed messages, right? It's disturbing. Yeah.
I think probably because, as you know, a woman growing up in this culture, I bought into for a long time about the way you dress and your appearance gives off certain things on people. So I have lived in neighborhoods where every time you walk down the street, people are saying things to you, and you can't cross the street and get away from it because it's always there. And I felt very unsafe, and it affected me really negatively. Like maybe the first time I was like, oh, okay, but now it really affected me negatively, and like wanted to never look at anybody, or I never felt safe.
So I'm hearing it can sort of wear away at your sense of safety and ownership of the streets, ownership of your right to walk. Is that reading into what you're saying? No, it's good. Okay. Great. What do other people think? Well, let me ask this question.
Just one of the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that is maybe outside of this room, people would think that's a very like unharmful thing to do. And definitely go along with Jill's sentiment that, oh, why would women want a compliment?
Right.
And so I think that our culture definitely sees that as a very benign thing. I think that it definitely gets to the root of what Angela was saying about objectifying women, where it's kind of valuing them for their appearance.
So outside of this room, you're saying it would probably be ranked much less harmful. Yeah? Do other people agree with that? That's my sense, too. This is a question. The first question I usually ask is this a compliment? And usually, most people say, well, no, probably not. Can this be intended as a compliment? Does everyone acknowledge that it might be intended as a compliment? Okay. Amazingly, and I love to do this in mixed gender groups. So guys, you who are using this and intending it as a compliment, listen to how people respond. They're not receiving it as one. If you're intending to compliment someone, you might want to think of using an approach that doesn't make them feel scared. You might want to try using a method of compliment that doesn't make people want to yell at you. And it gets back to me to this idea that men are taught that there are so few ways that we can communicate. That somehow it comes to the point where we're like, hey, there's an attractive woman. Maybe if I honk my horn, she'll want to marry me.
Geese, right? We're all geese, right?
We're all geese, right? So there's this thing that's going on about are men being given tools to communicate effectively? It's really, you were talking about how scary this is. It's also kind of sad for that. Wow. Well, where do we want to place this? Does it go up here? Who says it should go here or lower? Lower. And who says it should go higher? A couple people say it should go higher, but most of you are saying lower. Would anyone say it should go in the not at all harmful? Okay, how about here, for the sake of peace and efficiency? Great.
I should remind everyone that this is a continuum of harm to women. Okay? Telling a man or a boy that he throws like a girl. Oh. Is it harmful?
I don't like being an athletic person. It kind of pisses me off when people say throw like a girl, because I throw awfully well, you know what I mean? not like it's really harmful to me, but I'm just kind of like, you know, where did that ever even come from?
What sport do you play?
I used to play basketball,
You play basketball.
but I grew up playing softball, and I know how to throw.
Who can pitch faster? Professional fast pitch softball players or professional baseball players?
Baseball.
The pitchers?
Pitchers, guys.
It's actually been found on average that professional fast pitch softball pitchers can pitch the ball at higher speeds than professional baseball players can.
Where's the professional softball?
Well, not professional Olympics.
No, there's now professional softball teams.
Really?
There are a few.
North Carolina had one.
They start new leagues occasionally. They don't last for very long.
Probably a lot to do with the mechanism of how it's being thrown though.
What's the mechanism?
The girls in the 360, like the crazy. Wind up.
They get a whole wind up.
Yeah.
And how do the men throw it?
Yeah, they just have, they throw, I mean, and I'm not saying that that's a good thing to say. I think it's, you know, it is a great thing to win, and it says that we're not equal.
That you're not equal.
Yeah.
Where do we think it came from? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, where she said, like, it bugged her, but it wasn't that harmful to her. Like, I don't know her, but she seems like a strong, a strong woman. She knows what's going on. But to a young girl who hears that, it's gonna be more harmful. That's gonna be the mentality she has in her mind.
That us being older, we're more prepared. We can hear it, it can bounce off us. But maybe a younger person, it would hurt that person more. Have we heard this? Have the men heard this?
Almost everyone. Okay.
How old were we when we first heard it? Elementary school, 5 or 6? What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say that it's harmful because it perpetuates the stereotype of men, which just, you know, perpetuates that same dynamic of, you know, men are supposed to be powerful and tough and strong.
Men are supposed to be powerful, tough. It just keeps his box. It keeps men in that box.
It makes a girl feel like that if she does throw a ball better than a boy, that she's weird. And that she
She's
shouldn't do that.
weird.
She should stop.
And when I was in college, I had this English professor. He was known around campus as being the most sexist English professor. But he said something, and because he was openly sexist, it was like he could say things. He would say things that you wouldn't hear from anyone else. But he said something that's always stuck with me. He said that that girls are smarter than boys. That because of the boxes that we're putting girls and boys in, that girls, as they get older, speak less, try to dumb themselves down to not overshadow the boys. And that's the training that girls are getting. Again, most sexist professor on campus, so I can put it on him if you don't like it, and you can say it was a good move on David if you do like it. What else? Okay, where would we place this on the continuum? Is it as harmful as these other things up here? No? I see some shaking heads. I see some yes heads.
I think it's as harmful as my bitch because it gets the same power structure that men physically dominating women.
That it's the same power structure of men being more in power, physically dominating over women.
They should dominate.
And that men should dominate. That it's not just training women, the self-esteem issue, but that we're training men to dominate in some way.
I think it also gets at, along with my bitch, that women are to be viewed as less than, unequal, something you don't want to be.
For Hanukkah last year, my mom bought me an Oxford shirt. Buttoned down, nice, beautiful Oxford shirt. I mean, it was a great present. So happy to receive it. What color was it? How many times have I worn it? Worn it once. Now, right?
Dinner with mom, right?
I wore it that first night, right? Now, we're supposed to be outside the box. I can't wear this shirt, right? It's a color, and I can't wear this shirt, right? No one laughed at me when I wore this shirt. No one said, David, you look stupid wearing this shirt. But I still can't put it on. It's a beautiful shirt.
Start calling it salmon color.
Yeah, I'll call it salmon color. I want to look like a fish. I won't unpack that one. But I can't wear it. Does it have anything to do with the fact that at a very early age, I was given just blue toys, blue blankets, blue clothes, told not to wear pink? Maybe. What does this mean? What does it mean to throw like a girl? Can someone demonstrate it?
It's not a compliment.
It's not a compliment. For those of you who didn't see it, Ken went like this. Would most people agree with that?
Usually there's a sound that goes with it too, right? It's like, we've done this a lot.
Did you have a dominant hand when you played? Which one was it? What happened when you threw with your right? You can't do it.
You throw like a girl.
What happens when men try to throw with their least dominant hand? With the less dominant hand? Right?
It just goes whichever direction.
It goes
Whichever direction.
It goes whichever direction. It may go backwards. So where would we place this then? I mean, is it as harmful as the other ones? I hear a lot of people saying it's as harmful as my bitch. Is this where most people would place it? Who would place it higher? Who would place it lower? Who would place it not at all harmful? Sounds like most people would say right around here. Why don't you, I just want to see who would place it here. Okay, that's most of you.
All right. For the sake of time, unless you particularly want us to, I'm just going to go through the ones that we have so you can see the other ones that we talk about. And then we'll do a little bit more conversation. We do these two together. We have stranger rape and acquaintance rape. Chance to get at what the differences are, how they affect people differently. Opening doors only for women and girls and not for men and boys. I grew up in the Deep South. I have to talk about that. Believing that when a woman or a girl says no to sex, that you just have to push a little harder. Get into some really interesting discussions about what the word push means. Going to a strip club. Again, that doesn't happen here, right? Refusing to wear a condom. Believing that a woman's place is at home with the kids. Or staying silent when a guy puts a girl or a woman down. Would you? What would you like to say about that one, Jessica?
I'd like to hear what you want to say.
Oh, so you'd like to listen about that? Okay, it's mostly for my own good. What do you all think? Is this harmful to women?
Absolutely.
Why?
It shows that nobody really cares that it's a woman. I mean, it's another person.
You're all
But it shows
alone.
nobody cares.
Nobody cares, you're all alone. It's accepted, maybe it's approved of. What do other people think? What happens when somebody insults a guy? Do people step in?
No.
Do people speak up? No?
I think guys do for other guys. I don't know.
Maybe, sometimes. It's interesting. But we've sort of got this thing going that we're not supposed to speak up for anyone but ourselves on some level. In a lot of ways. And one of the reasons that I say that is particularly in connection with this one about opening doors. That there's also a sense of chivalry that I think might go, you can't speak that way about a lady. And in some ways I wonder whether that might also be harmful. Which, gee, kind of puts men in a tough spot, right? Kind of puts people in a tough spot. So what do you think? Yeah.
Well, I've had my boyfriend do both, and really both times it's never really good enough. Because when he does say something, it's like, oh, that's really cute, but I really just say it myself. Whereas when he doesn't say anything, I get mad because he didn't say anything.
Oh, goodness. You know what I
And it
have
really
to do.
depends on the context, too. Like, when he did send up for me, it was something really bad.
Mhm.
And when it's something minor, he doesn't send up for me, then I'm just like, well, you really should have said something. But it's not, you know,
Right.
that big of a deal. Like, it really, but I'd rather send up for myself than have him send up for me.
favorite scenes from one of my least favorite movies ever. The movie White Men Can't Jump. So, I love that movie. Yeah. Well, there's this one great scene in which Rosie Perez, right? Rosie Perez says to Woody Harrelson, they're in bed, she says, "I'm thirsty." And so he gets up and he goes and gets her a glass of water and he brings it back to her and she's, "What the hell is this?" I'm like, "What? You said you're thirsty. I got you a glass of water." And she said, "I didn't want you to get me a glass of water. I wanted you to say, I too have known thirst." And it's one of my favorite scenes I have ever witnessed. Because it's exactly the situation you're describing, right? I know what the right thing to do is. I should go get her a glass of water. So I don't have to ask her if she'd like one. I don't have to see, maybe she wants vodka. Maybe she wants milk. Maybe she just wants to go get it herself, but she wanted to, sort of work her way up to it. Or maybe she just felt like complaining. But I decided which one of those was appropriate. And this is similar to what you're saying about your boyfriend. I described him as your boyfriend.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's an interesting situation. I mean, I wonder what that would have looked like if Woody Harrelson had said, "Would you like something? Can I get you something?" Or if you, in that situation, when somebody said something, if you had known that if you chose to speak up, that your boyfriend had your back, that your boyfriend was going to be there and back up whatever you were to say. It's a different kind of conversation, right? But what does it mean to stay silent?
It means you're afraid.
It means you're afraid.
Or you agree.
Or you agree.
Or you don't have the tools to speak up.
Or you don't have the tools to speak up.
It's not your place.
Or you don't feel like it's your place.
I'm working on a project right now, a video project with a woman named Grace Poor on incest sexual abuse and how to prevent it, how to do interventions. And I'm working with a couple other men. We're sort of talking about what we as men can do to stop it. And this one guy told this story about the daughter of the neighbors next door coming over to his house and saying, "My father's doing these things to me. But don't tell anyone that I told you." This idea that it's happening, if it's happening over here, it's not my place to intervene in some way. That's family business. That we got to keep that in the house in some way.
So let's try to place this. What do you think? Let's start in the middle. Who says here or higher? Raise your hand. And who says who says lower than here? Raise your hand. Okay, so it's definitely here or higher. Put it, again, in the interest of efficiency, just slightly higher. So we can move on. Thank you. We have two more. Using alcohol or other drugs to loosen a girl up. And the final one is slapping a girl or woman when she gets out of line. So as you can imagine, lots of possible conversations going on.
So let's go back upstream. I know that was an hour ago, but let's go back upstream. We're walking upstream, and what do we see? We see a man. And he is just taking people and throwing them into the water, just chucking them in. How does he view the people that he's throwing into the water? Huh? They don't mean very much to him? Feels like he has control of them? They're toys. They're all alike? There's no difference among any of them? How else might he view him? Huh? That they're his enemy. Wow. He doesn't see any reason for them to be alive anymore. Why might he see him this way? I have an answer for you. Here's where all the good work that you all have done to create this continuum comes down to a spiel that we're going to give you.
Nicely phrased.
Thanks. I like to put the Yiddish in. We live in a rape culture. Has anyone heard that before? That sexual assault doesn't happen in a vacuum. That there are things that are going on inside our culture that are supporting sexual assault. That this man who's throwing people into the river isn't doing it on a whim, or isn't doing it because he was just born to see these people as objects or toys, but that there are things around him that are supporting this notion that the people are less than him, or that the people are his enemy, or that the people are under his control, and that he can do whatever he wants with them. That in fact, this man lives in a culture where we have all of these things. Everything you put on here you said was harmful. We didn't tell you where to put them. I mean, we kind of sort of asked questions, but we didn't tell you where to put them. And so if we're living in a culture where these things are harmful, then what does it mean when we let it happen? Another way to look at it. If you think of each of these as a bar that comes down, honking or whistling at a woman walking down the street, bar comes down, you can walk around it. It's not a big deal. Referring to one's girlfriend as my bitch, it's another bar that comes down. I can try and walk around that. But then we got blaming. It's another bar, and another bar, and another bar, and another bar, and another bar. And soon, it's a cage that we're all living in, both men and women, that give us the notion that men should have control over women, that women are less than men. And the fact is, if rape culture was something that we could see, was something that just was so overpowering and oppressive, then we'd fight against it. But then we wouldn't have to struggle against it. The fact is, it's around us because it's insidious, because it's subtle, because we feel like it's not a big deal when we hear someone refer to one's girlfriend as my bitch. You know, that's not that big a deal. And maybe it's not. Maybe it's not that big a deal when we hear a man or a boy told not to throw like a girl. Well, when it's connected to all these other things, that's where it gets its power. And so the fact is, we can't just go attack rape culture as a whole. We got to attack all these little individual pieces that are there that we call PC, or that we call not harmful, or that we say aren't a big deal, that if we reach a certain age, we can just let them brush off our back. But they're still there, and they're still contributing to this idea of women being less than men. When we honk or whistle at a woman walking down the street, we're saying she doesn't have control over, she doesn't have freedom in walking down the street, that she gets looked at. We refer to one's girlfriend as my bitch. We're saying that a woman is possessible, that she's an animal. We're blaming a woman and girl for being raped because she wore revealing clothes. We're saying women don't have the freedom to wear what they want to wear. We're telling a man or a boy that he throws like a girl, especially for boys, at a very early age. We're telling them that what you want to do, we're not saying you're throwing bad, here, let me show you how to throw better. We're saying, don't be like a girl. Whatever you do, don't be like a girl. Because being like a girl is being bad. Finally, we're saying, we don't care about it. It doesn't matter to us that this happens. That even though we came up with all of these reasons over here as why it's a men's issue, we really don't care. And so that what men can do is they can work to break down these individual components of the culture. Because we feel once you've broken these down, you may not have rape anymore.
And that's the next question. We talked about, well, why do people stay silent? And we had a lot of different answers. I think the one that jumped out at me was because people don't have the tools to speak. They don't quite know what to say. So what we want to spend the rest of the time we're here today doing is building some of those tools, to build a little toolbox. that people can take with them wherever they go, mental toolbox, of strategies. What can you say? How can you respond when you see something that needs some kind of intervention? Nonviolent intervention strategies. And for that, what I want to ask for is 5 volunteers. Can I get 5 people to come down here? It won't hurt, I promise.
Come on, you've been sitting in your chairs for an hour and a half. Let's get down here. Come on down, yeah.
Is it? We can't have everyone come from this corner, though. We need to.
Oh, I guess we can.
Apparently we can. Okay. We've got 5 volunteers. Thank you all very much. And what we're going to ask you to do is to choose one of these cards and to act out 2 interventions. So 2 different ways that you might intervene. Let's not do sexual assault stuff. So something that you might say. What do you think? Pick one. This is are you all okay to do that one?
Yeah.
Okay? So you're going to, can you act this out, whatever the scene is, and tell people what roles you're going to play. You need to take, maybe you can take a minute.
Yeah, right.
Take a minute, decide what roles you're going to play, who's going to do the intervention. And so all the rest of you, anyone from out of town? What I'd like all of you to do, can I hold up the card? The scene is using alcohol or other drugs to loosen a girl up. I'd like you all from the audience to think about what you might do, how you might respond if you see that happen.
We need my girlfriend. We need 2 interventions, right?
Yeah.
2 different interventions.
I got it. That's fine. I feel bad for Trevor. I feel bad for Trevor. You can already hear them. All right.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, can you introduce the scene to everybody?
Okay, well, we are his friends.
Yeah,
and
we're
she's,
friends.
she's been drinking, and that's her friend.
Yeah, she's kind of drunk.
I think I'm sober.
You're buddies too, and you're a relatively sober buddy.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
I'll be chilling over here for a while.
Action.
You okay? You all right? One other beer? You can have one of them. Yeah?
I really think that I really think that you should back off. She's really
What?
drunk and she doesn't know what she's doing. I really think that she's eating more than she's drinking. It's true.
And it's just that easy.
Oh, that was perfect.
You want to do the second one?
Yeah, go with
All right. You want to start over?
See.
Okay, and action. Take 2.
You having a good time?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
Getting hot.
Not much. Just looking for an errand. A flower. Getting kind of low. You want another one?
Hey, dude, Eric, are you okay? Trevor, you okay?
I'm fine. I'm really good, actually.
Can I talk to you for a second?
All right. Just a sec. You're up.
Yeah, just like random.
Hey, Trevor, can you talk to
I'm
me?
pretty Yeah. Whoops.
What are you doing?
You.
What are you doing?
Dude, she was
My question is, do you want to really be doing this then?
No, I'm just having a good
Yeah,
time so
yeah,
far.
having a good time. If she had a good time, she could have a good time in the morning after you have a good time with her.
Okay, I'm not that kind of guy. That's not what I was thinking at all.
Okay, then what were you thinking?
I was just having a good time. So, actually, you know what? Let's just go. I don't think she's gonna want to talk to me now. You guys were here a lot.
Buzzkill, right?
Well done. Thank you. Well done. So,
Okay, thank you for the bravery there. That was excellent.
okay. What did you all see? In the first intervention, what happened?
Jumped on me?
They jumped. The friend jumped on you. It was sort of a distraction intervention of some sort, right? I mean, which is something that's very simple. I mean, especially when you're talking about a violent situation. You know, sometimes you can't go up to someone who's hurting somebody else and just say, well, let's talk about why you're doing this. No, you have to somehow end the situation in some way. Get the woman out of there. What were you going to say?
Well, I was saying this was like in a bar context, and like, you know, they were drinking at the bar and stuff. Like, I think that's exactly what a girl, like a girlfriend would do for her friend. There's really nothing, like no girl's gonna go up to a guy that, you know, start a fight. Most girls will distract.
We'll distract.
Because usually when you distract a girl, she like forgets about this guy. She's like, wait, oh my god, I want to drink, but okay, let's go over here and do that. Like,
Right. I mean, there's something about just getting the situation ended in some way, which is something that needs to be considered whenever there's a violent situation, or if things are getting a little heated up.
I like what Angela and Lauren did after, which was they followed up. They initiated a discussion with their friend about why what he was doing wasn't okay.
That maybe it's not just about ending the situation, but talking to him about what's going on. That we're not just intervening to end the situation, but we're intervening about the attitude as well. His attitude was to get her drunk. We need to do an intervention there as well.
I think in a situation like that, the guy never actually thinks to himself, I'm going to rape this girl. He never thinks of himself as a rapist.
Right.
And so just putting it in that light is usually enough to...
Sometimes you just need to clarify the situation. I'm coming back to you. Sometimes you need to clarify the situation. Sometimes you just need to say, this is what you're doing. Do you see this? Because you're right. A lot of men don't see that. And I mean, this is when we're doing, you know, a scene where violence may be about to occur. But even if we're talking about calling someone my bitch, you know, sometimes all it takes is just to clarify what that does. But what your two friends did was also great. They pulled you aside and said, you know, we're friends, right? And sometimes when we're with our friends, it's just that simple. Sometimes you need to say, what you're doing is just making you look really bad. You know, you can do whatever you want, but as your friend, I just got to say, you're just, you know, you're doing some really nasty stuff there. You're really putting on a terrible image. You know, sometimes it's a friend's right to say that. I mean, it's a friend's right to pull someone away from the situation. It's also a friend's right just to say, as your friend, as someone who cares about you, what you're doing sucks. I'm sure you'd probably use better language than that. There was also something else that happened. It wasn't just one person doing the intervention. Sometimes we forget about that. What was great was it was a group intervention. That if all the messages we're getting from different people are supporting, are rape-supporting attitudes, then it's even stronger when we have two people who are intervening against that attitude, right? And sometimes it's scary. Sometimes we think that other, you know, if I'm in a bar with men and one of the guys is giving a woman drinks and the other guys aren't saying anything, then maybe they think it's okay. Maybe I shouldn't say anything. Maybe if I try to approach one of them to do an intervention, maybe they're going to think, no, what's your problem? You're not a real man. You also used humor, which was great. I mean, you did, you know, this grabbing thing here. You also used some sarcasm. I mean, humor is a great way to do it. Sarcasm is fantastic. You know, sometimes it may be just too difficult to go right in and say, you're not doing the right thing. Sometimes you need to use some humor. What are some other intervention strategies that we saw? Or when you're thinking about it, what are some other intervention strategies that we could use? Has anyone, let me think about this. Has anyone talked to someone who may be objectifying a woman and say, what if that was your mother? Or what if that was your sister? It's this idea of bringing it home. Sometimes if a man is objectifying a woman and doesn't see the humanity, sometimes you need to humanize it. And the only way sometimes you can do that is to bring it back home for that person, to make it real, to think about what it would be like if someone was saying that to that person's mother.
In some ways, that's similar to the we're friends, right? That in order to hurt somebody else, whether it's assault or insult or whatever you're doing, you have to dehumanize yourself to some extent. What this does is it insists on recognizing the humanity of the person that you're confronting. What this does is it makes sure to rehumanize the person who's been targeted. These two work hand in hand.
What are some think about experiences where you've intervened. What are some strategies that you've used? Whether it's intervening in sexism or intervening in something else. Have you ever tried to stop somebody from doing something that was harmful? What did you do? Huh?
Point out that you care about them.
Point out that you care about them. That we're friends, right? I'm not doing this just because I feel like it's the right thing to do. I'm doing it because I care about you. You're my friend. I don't want anything bad to happen to you.
What else could you do?
Point out the risks of bad things.
Some more clarification. Talk about not just what they're doing, but what it might bring about. Say that what you're doing is rape or can bring about sexual assault. Here are the risks that are involved. Here are the possible consequences. There's another one that my mom was really good at. My mom was great at this one. There were times where I would do something bad, and she wouldn't say a word. She would just look at me and just shake her head. And I knew what I was doing was wrong. Like, there's just no way I could get around it. And I knew it was really bad because she wasn't even going to give me the chance to have a conversation about it. That I was already closed off from her. Some way it's really effective. Sometimes we don't need to say anything at all. If we're hanging out at a bar and I tell a joke that's sexist and he doesn't laugh, but he just stares at me and shakes his head, I've gotten the message. You know? There's a message very clear right there. Sometimes it's not saying something that's an intervention. It's not laughing when the joke is being made.
Often the reason that people make sexist jokes or engage in that kind of behavior is that they're looking for approval. They're looking for support. And if they find, gee, I'm not getting that anymore, significant possibility, stop.
And then finally, we talked about humanizing it in terms of thinking about the person that they're talking about. But there's also humanizing it for yourself as the person intervening. An I statement. I am doing this. I don't feel comfortable with what you're saying. So you shouldn't say it. You know, it's not about whether the rest of the world thinks it's is uncomfortable by it, but I'm uncomfortable with it. And you'll find that people are a lot less defensive. They'll want to talk to you about it. You know? And usually you just say, I and the action that, I feel uncomfortable with this action, I want you to stop doing it, or whatever result you want to have happen. But that right there is an intervention strategy. That it's not about, oh my God, I have the whole weight of the world thinking about whether this is right or wrong, and we're going to get in this huge debate about it. But all I need to say is, I just feel uncomfortable about this. what you said just really rubbed me the wrong way. You know, I kind of wish you wouldn't do it around me. Because that right there is taking away one of those bars. Or maybe putting up another one for that person from saying things. So if I say I feel uncomfortable, and then that person tells a joke to Patrick, and Patrick says that he feels uncomfortable, then we're creating a new cell around him. Or maybe we're freeing him from feeling like he has to make these jokes. Any other intervention strategies that you can think of or that you've experienced? Whether with sexism or sexual assault or somewhere else? What do you all do? I mean, in thinking about intervention strategies that you're trying to train people with?
Well, in many ways, it's a discussion like this one. People know what's going to work best with their friends. It's just, like you said, having the toolbox in your head ahead of time, having a plan, understanding what's going to be a dangerous situation, or understanding what is defensive and taking ownership of that. And so, in a lot of ways, it's what we do with our presentations, foster the same discussion.
Is to create a discussion. And sometimes the discussion can't happen at that very moment. Sometimes you just need to start with one thing and let it go for another time. I love DC public transit, right? I was on the Metro bus a couple months ago. And there are very few people on the bus. And in the back of the bus, there was this young woman, and she was obviously trying to read. And this guy got on the bus and sat down. She was sitting down on the middle seat. He went and sat down one seat over, right? And he tried to pick her up. I mean, he was just trying every line, every horrible line that you could think of, he was trying on this woman. And she was like,
It's a nice girl like you doing that at bus.
right. Can I get you some stale peanuts that I found underneath my chair? And I mean, she's trying to read, and she's like, you leave me alone? And he wouldn't do it. Now, I'm sitting there thinking, well, I gotta do something, but I'm terrified, right? Like, what should I do? You know, I'm on public transit, right? Bad things happen on public transit usually, especially at this time of night. And it was also in a bad neighborhood, as I recall.
It was in D.C.
It was in D.C., right? Because it's all crime, right? But I had just purchased our brand new Men Can Stop Rape baseball caps. And so all I did is I had it going forward the entire time, and all I did was I turned it around so it's facing backwards, right? My goal was not to jump in there and say, okay, well, let's talk about sexual assault in society. I'm too scared to do that. I don't feel comfortable having those conversations. I feel more scared than uncomfortable to have those conversations. I felt like something dangerous would happen to me. But by doing this, there was some message coming out. He gets off the bus. Another guy gets on the bus, sits in the same exact seat, and starts doing the same thing. Starts just trying to pick her up.
Tag team.
Again, I don't really want to have a conversation. I just don't feel safe having a conversation with this guy. So I get out of my seat. There's one seat between the two now. And I just go sit down in that seat. Now in between the two, I don't say a word, right? If a conversation's going to happen now, he's going to start it. It's not me intervening and saying, what I think you're doing is wrong, but he now has to intervene with my action. So sometimes it doesn't have to be, what you're doing is wrong, or let me clarify what you're doing. Sometimes you just need to say, I'm not okay with this. Because that's how this culture works. That's how rape culture works, is there's a silence around it. And so we all feel like everyone's okay with it. And so what both men and women need to start doing is to start sending the message that it's not okay. Because I think most of us are uncomfortable with it.
I feel like I need to tell one more Metro story.
Go for it.
If you ever come to DC, you're gonna think you should never ride the Metro. But it's not true, it's actually a wonderful system. Marty Langland is an author. She's also the former chair of the board of the DC Rape Crisis Center. She wrote a book called Back Off, how to confront and stop sexual harassers in their tracks, or something like that. It's in the library of SARS. They have 2 copies, in fact, and I highly recommend it. But she tells this wonderful story. Marty's a friend of mine, and she's just amazing. And she tells a story that she was riding a bus one day, and the buses are crowded in DC, you know, particularly on work day. And she's standing near the back of a bus, and this guy gets on, and he starts walking down the aisle, and there are a bunch of women standing. He starts walking down the aisle, feeling the asses of the women who are standing there. And he's doing just very blatantly. Nobody's saying anything. The women are all looking really uncomfortable. The men are all kind of, you know, not noticing anything. Probably intentionally not noticing, because they don't know what to do either, but no one's saying anything. And so Marty's just standing there, sort of waiting her turn. And she gets to a certain point. She sees the guy, he's reaching for her. And she reaches behind her, grabs his hand, raises it up in the air, and says, "Whose hand is this on my ass?" Needless to say, the guy got off the bus at the next stop. And she got a standing ovation. A lot of people had already been standing, but she got a standing ovation when he left the bus. Maybe not the strategy I would always recommend, but I think a really exciting and empowering story. There are things that you can do, and if you assume the people around you are in fact probably just as uncomfortable as you are, you're probably right. But if you call on them for support, like Marty did, you're going to get it. So, yet another doesn't quite fit with any of our strategies up here, but fun story.
And I would just encourage you to think of these strategies and to come up with some of your own. Because when we see something that supports sexual assault, it's not like we planned on going into this room thinking, okay, I have a feeling a rape-supporting attitude is going to be in this room, so I'm going to think about what I'm going to do when I get in there. It usually surprises us. I mean, I'm sure we can think of some scenarios where it's more likely to happen than others, but it usually surprises us. So the best thing for us to do is to come up with some of our own strategies and make sure they're always in our head. It's getting time to leave, so I wanted to say thank you all very much for coming. I'm just really excited with what's going on here in Montana. I go to colleges all over the place, and the work that Chantel and SARS and the Take a Stand group are doing is really fantastic. If you don't know the Take a Stand group, please get in contact with Chantel. It's for both men and women, but there is a men's discussion group involved as well. So if you want to keep these conversations going, that's what I'd recommend. I'd also like to challenge you all for something. We as real men, we like to prove it, we challenge each other, right?
Go for it.
I challenge you to talk to 2 other people who weren't here today. There are 13,000 people on this campus, right? I don't think they all had a test to do tonight. I would talk to them. I would talk to them about what you heard today. Even if you disagreed with what we said, keep the conversation going. Because if you leave here and the conversation dies, then we really haven't done anything. You know, the learning that we do in here is going to be nothing compared to the conversations that you're going to have outside of here. What do you all want to do afterwards? What are some ideas that you all want to do on this campus? Or in your community?
Where do we go from here?
You all, you're tired? Go ahead.
Get together with a group of friends. My friends and
To keep the conversation going, talk to your friends about it.
Don't remain silent. You're something or not,
To knock this card down. What else would you like to do?
To do what you do, to educate.
To educate, to open it up so we can have more conversations outside. And also to deepen what we do here. I mean, this is just the start. We see these attitudes all the time. And it's about educating ourselves about those attitudes. what's really great about this Montana that you all are meat eating, that you all are cow eating, I saw an ad on the way over here for Dodge Ram. It said, Dodge Ram, it's like a big, fat, juicy steak in a land full of tofu. But I'm a vegetarian, right? So that already I'm like, I don't want to drive that car. But there's something else going on there. And it's about keeping that conversation going, continuing to educate ourselves. Because for every time we do a presentation or we have a conversation, people turn on the television or people go into a bar and they hear 40 different messages that are against that one message. So to keep deepening it, to keep doing presentations. Anything else? Has everyone filled out one of these?
No one wants those.
Has anyone not filled out one of these? These are all in the back. These are pledges done by SARS. It says, I pledge to never to commit, condone, or remain silent about sexual violence, to challenge others to recognize that they can be powerful without making other people powerless, and to encourage all men and women to use their collective voice and end sexual violence. It's something to sign. But it's more than that. It's also a symbol of a community coming together to end sexual violence in that community. If you go to the student union, you'll see a banner that has a ton of these on there. Some of them with different illustrations, most of them with hands drawn on there. I recommend that you take one of these, illustrate it in whatever way you want. Maybe put your hand on here, maybe put another drawing on there, and then sign it. And either leave it on the table up there or bring it to Chantel later. You get a postcard. I want to end with a quote. Everyone know who James Baldwin is? Author, wrote Go Tell It on the Mountain. He said the most radical step you can take is your next one. Rape culture, sexual assault, these are things that we can't just snap our fingers and make go away. And we get paid to do this. And we can't do it. You can't just make it go away tomorrow. But we also know that if people don't take the next steps, then it definitely will be here forever. So the idea is, there's a lot of information we gave you today. There's a lot of good ideas of what to do next. Just make sure you take those next steps. It may not be this huge jump, but as long as you keep stepping, we're on our way. So I want to thank you all very much. We really appreciate it. And we also have handouts up in the back if you want to take some of those with you.
You all can hang out. We can talk if anybody wants to talk individually. If you want to talk as a group, we can do that. But we also want to let you go.